Hey everyone, I'm John with Lincoln County Watch. Today we're starting something new for our community. Relaxed, sit down conversations with the people who serve Lincoln County every day. The goal of these interviews is simple: to humanize the job, let people get to know the person behind the title, and give our local officials a transparent way to share information directly with the community. These are never gotcha interviews. Some questions may be tougher than others, some may come from community concerns, and sometimes there might be things our guests can't comment on, and that's okay. Our first interview is Lincoln County Sheriff Rick Harrell. Sheriff, thanks for taking the time to do this.
Good afternoon.
So before we get into the job, let's start with you as a person. Who is Rick Harrell outside the badge? What do you enjoy doing when you're not working?
Well, my wife would tell you that I do nothing but think about this job and focus on it. I don't relax enough, but I'm sure that's what she'd say. But I guess in I guess true self-reflection, I guess the biggest joy in my life right now is being a grandfather, a husband, and a father. I'm having a good time. I'm having a good time at it. Some people reject, getting older, and then it's a badge of honor for me. And I don't know how we did it, but we raised some good kids, and grandkids are great.
Any hobbies? Fishing, hunting?
I wanted to, my ambition is to take up fishing as in a serious way, but kind of like it's kind of like a golfer that's bought the clubs, but he hasn't went out there and done anything with it. That's kind of how I am with my fishing. So when I went overseas, I fished a little bit before I went overseas, and while I was overseas, my wife threw away all my fishing rods, and she goes, "Where you weren't using them?" So I was in Afghanistan. So it's kind of an ongoing thing for us. But I've reintroduced some fishing rods into my garage with the hopes of actually doing it more someday. But in the short term, uh, I just I just I do a lot of work, and then my joy though is truly from my family.
So when you do get that time off, where's your go-to local favorite place to eat? Favorite meal?
Favorite meal? It's like Joey from Cheers and said, what's your favorite food? And he says, sandwich. What kind of sandwich? Sandwich. So I'm the same way with pizza. Um, that's if I love pizza. I obviously eat too much of it. My wife would guarantee. She put me on starting January 1. She told me how terrible I did over the holidays with eating too much. So she said, you will start losing some weight. So that's my focus. And so although pizza is my kryptonite, any kind of pizza, and then like, where would you go for the best kind of pizza? I would say uh, back roads, and I'll tell you why. Is because that was the recipe for pizza when I was a kid. So I have this Freudian thing about that recipe of pizza. It reminds me of my childhood. So I really love that pizza there in Hawk Point.
What originally made you want to get into law enforcement?
Well, I grew up on a farm in Lincoln County. When I got out of high school, I really didn't have a plan beyond being a farmer. But then it became apparent to me that our farm wasn't enough to make a living off of. So I went to community college to figure that out, figure myself out. And that's why I tell people that I fell in with the wrong crowd in college because I took a constitutional law class that it was the professor was a motivated great American. That's kind of an old hippie, believed in the country, believed in the Constitution, and he inspired us. And I say not just me, I say us because not just myself, but another person in that class went on to go into the police academy straight from there because there was police officers also in that class, and they told us how the Constitution applied to their work and how they worked every day to make the world a better place. And so it was if you love this country, do something to make it better. And so I did. And when I went to the police academy at the time, they were going to give you 12 more credit hours for going to the police academy through the community college. So it wasn't a lose. No matter what, I was going to get 12 credits out of it. So I went, and I fell in love with the mission, and haven't looked back since.
You credit that professor with
Absolutely, the constitutional law class, and really fundamentally understanding what this nation is all about. Um, I, I believe in it.
What eventually made you decide to run for sheriff?
I was overseas at the time, and a lot was going on in terms of police reform, calls for police reform ever since Ferguson. A lot of things about should we, what could we do, what are we doing? There was a lot of voices locally that was opposed to some of those reforms, particularly admitting that many oftentimes that we are capable of making mistakes, and that when you do, you have to admit that and then work towards fixing it. And just I knew that some of the things that I have experienced, not only in my local law enforcement career, but then working with the military overseas with some of the finest people in the world, I felt like I had a lot of those answers. Some of that was particularly to introduce body cameras for the transparency of it. And I felt as a police officer that's something that could only benefit police, the police profession, by showing it, that angle of it, the truth of it, and then being able to refer to it and standing on that truth and being able to not only testify about it, but to demonstrate in a real way that that perspective of that truth. Again, and I said years ago, I heard someone say that it is a two-dimensional image of a three-dimensional situation from a single point of view. I said that to a former sheriff, and he said, "Never say that again." But it is a perspective on the truth that it is real. We had decided that when it was Sheriff Torres that I said that to back in the day, and I think it was very important that you have videotaped evidence to demonstrate to the public what we're doing out there and how we're doing it. And one thing that I'll take from that is the deputies originally, they were very hesitant about it. Obviously, they had some concerns about what that's really going to mean for them. But I had not too long ago, I had someone tell me that it actually, if he felt that it tremendously improved his performance as a police officer because he was just able to watch himself talk. And when he didn't like how he sounded or how he looked, then he modified his delivery and just became a better professional just because he got a chance to watch himself, just like a baseball player watching game videos. It's just you see yourself and then you can analyze your play and improve upon it.
Do you guys have somebody that does go through and I guess you would call quality control on all those?
Well, I'll tell you about. Well, yes, we do. We obviously, if there's some issues about it or something, then that's something we can lean in on, and we can show anybody that anything they want to see. But every year, we put together and I'll just talk about how I take a big picture look every year at this, like an annual thing, is that we take clips from the body cam footage from the jail and patrol, and I go through it and I try to get pictures of everybody working, so the deputies can see at the end of the year banquet, the awards banquet, show them themselves in like a music video kind of thing. It was just fun, but what it really does for me is a chance for me to take a deep dive into these to these experiences that we're having out there, and anything that wasn't perhaps a complaint related or a concern related or anything else. I take it. It's my audit period, so I actually use it as my personal annual audit. Is this effort, but it's a morale booster on the other side of that. Is that it actually produces something that they really enjoy watching.
Well, let's take a step back. You remember your first day as sheriff?
Yes.
Tell me about it. What surprised you the most stepping into that role?
Well, the thing about that is that I'd worked here before. I was actually in the command staff of Sheriff Torres. I'd worked in every division. I started as a corrections officer under Sheriff Everett Retcher. I was a patrol deputy. I've worked in every division, nearly every job, so I knew what I was getting myself into. At one period, I was actually the sheriff's adjutant, so I answered his phone. So the pace and tempo, I was the public information officer, so I dealt with it at every level. So there wasn't really any surprises in terms of I did not know that, you know. But it felt like coming home. Really hadn't changed all that much. I really didn't. So I guess the things that surprised me is that I thought in terms of the body camera, let's talk about that, in terms of the body camera and bringing on these reforms that would help build trust and back in the community and help the professional law enforcement uh, do a better job and serve the community. I thought the body cameras would be something that the deputies would just be overwhelmingly supportive about, but they were scared. A lot of them were, and it took some time, but they did realize that it does help them. I told them the story. I said when I was a Troy police officer, um, well, it goes further back because when I was a sheriff's deputy, I was a rookie and someone lied. They made a complaint on me and they lied about it, and I was naive as a young man and couldn't believe that that actually happened. So I'm so old that when I got a tape recorder, it was actually a tape, right? So ever since then, I put a tape in my pocket. When I went to a call, click, it was recording, and it helped me write reports and capture information. It was really great, and went to the city of Troy, and later became, as technology advanced, became a digital recorder. But even before the digital recorder, I still had that tape reel. And the chief at the time, Bill Hopkins, said, "Hey, somebody complained about you." And I said, "They did?" Because I had straight police, and I said, what was that? And he told me about it. And I said, "I've got that on tape, chief." And he goes, "You do?" And I said, "Yeah." And like something that he didn't expect. And I said, "I'm off for a couple of days. You can have my stuff." And I showed him how to work it and all that. And I came back to work, and he says, "You gave me one of my best days as chief." And he'd been chief for a long time. And I said, "What? What happened?" And he says, "Well, the man came in to make his complaint about you. And I asked him to come in my office and asked him to sit in that chair. And I had your recorder right on my desk. And I just pushed play and folded my arms and looked at him. And he got up and walked out of my office." I said, "Told you, chief." So it's always been my perspective that if you have the ability to display truth, then you can't shade away from that. And in terms of the body camera, like 90% of human interaction is nonverbal. So somebody could walk up to me, punch me in the face, and not say a word about it. But that recorder was not going to capture any of that, but the body camera was. So just imagine how much more information that it provides us with. So if my son or daughter was on either side of that conversation, whether they're being stopped by the police or that they're a police officer themselves, and today one of my sons is a police officer, I'd want them to have a body camera just to keep them safe. If my daughter is stopped, if my wife is stopped, if my other sons are stopped, it makes me as a citizen feel like there's truth there that we can always rely on. Because there is such a thing as bad police officers, and that's okay to say that. They're human beings. By nature, we come flawed into this world, so we're not perfect. And we have to police each other to be honest about our imperfections and the fact that there's some evil among us that's yet to be rooted out. It's a reality, and so the body cameras helps us ensure that we're doing the best thing each and every time. And if there's a question about it, we can rely on a perspective of the truth that we can look back to.
You actually have body cameras in your jail, don't you?
Yeah, I think. Well, I was a corrections officer, so imagine. So I try to put myself in everyone's position. Whether I think about if I was the inmate, if I was the corrections officer, and I certainly have played that role as a corrections officer, that I'd want a body camera there if my son or daughter was on either side of it, that would prevent the corrections officer abusing the inmates in any form or fashion, not showing them proper dignity, and then also the inmates threatening the COs or trying to coerce them into doing wrong, maybe bribing them in some manner. But now it's you can't do that because it's all caught on body camera. In the jail, you can actually see it on the video. There's a red light rolling, and it's a reminder to the inmates that everything that you're saying is being recorded. Even as a City Troy police officer, I had the digital recorder, and a guy was saying all kinds of crazy things to me in a calm way about how he was going to lie about me and everything like that. And I just let him go on and on and on. And it's finally I said, you know, everything you've said is being recorded. He goes, turn that thing off. I said, are you kidding me? So it's, you know, it's just one of those things where if the red light's rolling, if you're watching me work, you can see that my body camera's on, and I'm not talking to an inmate privately, that it's actually being recorded. So that's a way we can monitor that and make sure that everything's above board. And then also, if my son or daughter was the corrections officer, then I can be assured that anything that's being said to them is non-threatening, and if there was something wrong, then the inmate can be held accountable to it. So it's a lot safer jail because of that.
What's the hardest part of being sheriff that most people don't see or understand?
Never turn it off. It's just like the pressure, the stress is just like Afghanistan, 24/7. It's always there. You don't know. In Afghanistan, you can be woke up in the middle of the night by boom, you know, just right there. But I feel the same pressure when the phone rings at night or I get a text. So I'm in constant communication with the jail. There's my state statute. I have to authorize certain actions. So I'm constantly in communication. There's a list of things that deputies have to notify me about when it occurs. So I'm just always on. I want, at some point in my life, I want peace. When I came home from Afghanistan, I just wanted to live in peace. When I was called to run and try to help, I felt like I had some answers that would help. So that's why I'm here. But it's the stress of it is deep.
Looking back so far, what are you most proud of during your time as sheriff?
That we have, the team that we've built. If this was like a softball team, we've had the best team that I've ever worked with in my life anywhere, and I've worked with a lot of fine people over the years. But this group of people that remains after so many years of trying to figure out how to do more with less, they really do. If you, in a quantifiable, meaningful way, you can point to things and say, look what they did. It's tremendous. I'm so proud of them. The fact that we're in the St. Louis metro area, one of the safest communities still. That's and every bit of that is because of the team that work here. They figured it out. They've embraced technology as a force multiplier and techniques that have been proven to work in other places, and we borrow great ideas, and they're encouraged to innovate and continuously improve, and they've executed very well. I almost said flawlessly, but we haven't arrived at any destination, and I don't think in perfection, that's Jesus Christ. We can recognize it, we can reach for it, but we're far from perfect. But we want to improve every day. We truly can, and we can recognize the fact that we need to continuously improve. And I'm excited about their accomplishments, and the fact that I'm excited about the fact that they're excited. So when they're having fun, and I said this is a great mission for a great purpose and a great community. If you're not having fun every day, you're doing it wrong. Because even in the hard times, even though it's a struggle at the time, they do make for the most extraordinary stories in the future. I think General Patton said to his soldiers that at least when you have your grandkids on your knee and they ask you what you did, that you don't have to say that you shoveled shit in Louisiana. You did something.
Well, on that note, who's your favorite deputy?
I always say Zach Owen is my bodyguard because he's the biggest guy.
Smart.
Okay, so yeah, so he is truly that. I do, when I walk around, when I see a group of them, and I say, how's my favorite deputies? So they understand when I say that, I love them all. But I love their stories. I go and I talk about cheerleading, so I try to motivate them just by listening to their stories, and I truly want to hear their work, and to be among them, and it makes me feel like I'm a regular police officer again. But I love the mission, and I love being around them. So, but that's all I have to say about that.
I want to talk about something that's been difficult for the community. We've seen multiple high-profile cases involving children living in extremely unsafe conditions, including cases where the same children were removed, returned, and later found again in similar situations. From the public's perspective, it feels like everyone failed these kids. Not just one, there's two cases that come to mind locally here, but law enforcement, DFS, the system as a whole. In general terms, why does this happen? And where does responsibility actually lie when situations like this continue for years?
Well, so as a citizen, as an American, it is going to fall to us. If you really to consider why America is a special place, because we don't need kings. You know, we don't need anyone telling us this is the way it's going to be. That we decided somehow working together that we can achieve better outcomes. That doesn't mean that we always agree with one another. We actually, part of the American spirit is this active and open debate about what's the best course of action. But in so doing, that the Constitution was written in such a way that it restrains government from action. So you can decide if you want the government to be more decisive and to be able to lean in and be faster in what they do. You have to give them more power, which means you have to give up more of your rights. If we decide to do that, that's an option. But you can't restrict government action and then expect the government to do more. So we as the citizens have to decide that we can do it through faith-based organizations here, through community efforts locally, and try to help as human beings to try to steer our own community, like our own neighbors and family members and friends, towards better outcomes and to hold them accountable, or ask the government to do it. But you can't take someone else's rights away and not at the same time give your rights up. So if you want the government out of your life, you can't invite them into somebody else's life without sacrificing something that belongs to you too. So that's the rub, is that yeah, the government could do more, but if you want the government to operate within the law, as a police officer, it's a challenge. It's not overwhelming. We can do everything we possibly can within the confines of the law and the Constitution, but there is limitations to it, and it's built that way. What's the old adage? I'm from the government, I'm here to help, and that scares the heck out of a lot of people. Yeah. Because most Americans, we want the government out of our lives.
The one biggest case that comes to mind is, I don't think your jurisdiction handled anything to do with that, on the children found in deplorable conditions. Mm-hmm. And then I don't know if you guys handled the other case with the Dutch.
Yes.
With all of that. But overall, are these situations more common than people realize? Because it seems both of those were, I know on the one more recent, that 1 year ago to date, I believe yesterday or this morning, they were charged with. And again, not going too deep into that specific case, but are these two just more severe that are coming to light, or is this?
Well, I'm sure that. Well, you know what scares me the most? It's not the ones we know about; it's the ones we don't know about.
Sure.
So it's a +1. Is that if you see one gun, assume there's another. If you see one bad guy, assume there's another. So there's children out there suffering right now silently that we don't know about, and that's the most frightening thing. Once the system, the prosecutor's office now engaged, the system can work. The system moves at the pace of a snail, it appears sometimes, because of the framework in which it's required to operate. But the main thing is, if we were going to do an intervention and we can stop the harm from happening, then it requires someone that knows to say something and to light the fire and to shoot off the flare and to let us know. In any problem, if the community meets us halfway, then we can take it the rest of the way in. The reason that crime is going down in Lincoln County, you know what the reason? The guy's doing a great job. I don't want to take anything away from the efforts of the deputy, and they'll tell you this, is that surveillance cameras are becoming more affordable. People feel more comfortable with them and then communicating with us about what they know and see and providing us with real evidence that's prosecutable. So really, we're keeping the right people behind bars because the community is coming forward with the evidence that it takes to prosecute them and find them guilty. So without the community's involvement, you can't just point to the government and say, fix all my problems. You have 5 deputies, if we're lucky, on the street at the time, sometimes horribly 3, and 70,000 people in this county nearly at this time. We need the community to help us keep us safe. So we're relying upon information. So if you know something, you see something, say something. This latest case, I'm interested to really do a case study on that. It's a City of Troy case, but eventually it's that up to the point that law enforcement got engaged, and when they did, they responded. And the kids are in a better space today. But when did their suffering begin? When could we have intervened earlier? And when should we have intervened earlier? So I want to answer those questions. And I think looking backwards and looking at it honestly and saying that yes, we could have done a better job, that's what we should be doing. But oftentimes what I found is that somebody along the line in the community knew and they didn't want to get involved. And that's the answer more often than not. So if it's your neighbor that you're concerned about, or your family member, or you see something, unfortunately it's a all too common human reaction is to not want to be wrong. They're afraid that their instincts are inappropriate, or they're just afraid to send the government into someone's household because they probably wouldn't want that in theirs. They tell themselves that maybe they're misinterpreting what's happening there. We do check the well-beings all the time. It's better to have gone and checked to make sure everything's okay than to not have it called at all. I tell people, if you hear something in the middle of the night, call us and we'll check it out, because you'd hate to think that the following day that you could have otherwise called somebody and someone would have been safe that came to harm just because you chose not to try to help, try to make a difference, or at least try to sound the alarm. That's what they used to, before there was law enforcement. I remind people that prosecutors are in the Bible, judges are in the Bible, jailers are in the Bible, but you know why police are not in the Bible? Because the community did it on their own. It was called the hue and cry. So if you and I were neighbors, let's say I tell them, look at a subdivision like a village, is that if your neighbors get into trouble, you'd cry for help and you'd call your neighbor and say, we need help over here, and then everybody comes over there and they help. That's community policing. So the deputies, because of the being so few, is that they're truly just a conduit between the community and justice. So the community has to provide the opportunity for that justice, is because they have to provide the information, they have to sound the alarm at least, and then they have to get involved to truly decide that we as a community are going to make a difference. Your deputies are your neighbors, you see them in your stores, your churches. That's really truly all they are, and they've been assigned the role to represent the government and follow on the constructs of the system within the confines of the Constitution. And that's challenging in and of itself, but without the community, just as citizens, deciding that we don't like this and we're going to change it, we can. But if you're just asking the government to come fix all your problems, it comes with limitation. It also comes with risk. Anytime that you're inviting the government into your life, understand that that's not something that we truly, when we woke up in the morning, that we didn't think that was something we wanted to do. I don't want it. And but yet I'm signed the role because a lot of times we're the only people that's going to be able to stand up and help anybody. So this is how we do it. We're just your neighbors deciding that when somebody calls, we'll come. I wish I could quote it, but I'm not near the theologian that I wish I was, but it's just, God said, who shall we send? And the man says, send me, I will go. And that's how we are.
I want to shift to something I heard you mention the other day, license plate recognition cameras.
Yeah.
The Sheriff's Office deployed license plate recognition cameras across Lincoln County. And you referenced them during the Ellsbury robbery?
Yes.
Can you explain how those cameras actually work, what role they are playing in that case, and how they help investigators respond faster to serious crimes?
Well, it was all based on crime prevention grants. So we decided that there's only a handful of us, but it'd be nice to have a sentinel. So imagine in most municipalities right now, there's at least one camera in Lincoln County. So there's 24/7. There's somebody that's able to reach back and say who is a possible suspect or who is a possible witness during, in the worst case, imagine a child abduction. We've had 2 of those that we're still investigating in Lincoln County, and it at least gives us some place to start to ask questions. We don't write tickets off of it. Some people think, are these stop sign cameras or things like that, where someday you're going to receive a letter in the mail saying that you did this bad thing and then you owe the court's money. It's not like that. But if it keeps people from driving fast, then you go ahead and tell them that, whatever you want to do. But to achieve some type of positive outcomes, you can go ahead and let people believe that you're maybe going to get a ticket someday. But I said that it's just like my grandpa and grandma Harrell. Their house was right on the road, and people would get off work, and it's before the Facebook. If you wanted to find out what was going on, you'd stop by my grandparents' house to say, "Hey, what's going on?" And then they'd share the whole information of the community, and they could tell you who went past their house, what they were driving, who maybe they had in there with them. So it's just like going back to Grandpa and Grandma Harrell and saying, who went by here about 3 o'clock driving a blue truck? And they tell you that's who it was. And so it's just like that. It's just somebody was awake. So it's always one of us. The camera is just like one of us always being awake and watching and be able to be a witness to life and be able to relate it back to us and tell us, a direction to travel.
Well, there's always concern about privacy with these types of things. What are these cameras that you kind of already touched on it, not used for, and what safeguards are in place to protect the public on these?
Well, we didn't buy it. It's not a service. We got great, intelligent people here on this team. So the community, we own the cameras. It's managed here locally by our own people. So we're not selling the data to China or anything like that. It's not going anywhere. Besides, we're keeping it here for 30 days, and then it's wiped away. We don't need it. So it's nothing that we're not using it for any other purposes besides the community using it if we need it and when. So it's homegrown and it belongs to the community. So that's the best thing for us as a citizen, the fact that we're not paying somebody else to do it for us, that we did it ourselves. And the reason we had to is because that's the only way we as a community could afford it. We couldn't afford it to have it done any other way. So that's a good thing that we had to get lean with it, because it actually, as a citizen, it makes it better for us.
Do you offer ride-along programs or opportunities for residents to see what deputies deal with day to day?
Sure, we give you a front row seat. That's absolutely true. You can come in and do a ride-along. We encourage that. I'm not going to use the word fun. Only reason because I was, if it was my wife that was on a ride-along, it would be an experience. So it's not going to be fun. It's just going to be an experience. But brace yourself.
If you could point to one area that still needs the most work, staffing, funding, resources, laws, what would it be?
Well, resources in terms of funding is going to get us more staffing. We need more help. We have the same amount of deputies we had 20 years ago. We have, and if inflation's kicked me in the teeth. 25% inflation since I've took office, and in the last 20 years, it's been 66%. So if you look at the budget of the sheriff's office 20 years ago and today, it's a smaller budget than it was 20 years ago, and we have fewer people here today than we had back then. I think we have 84 employees total. We have 50 deputies. We had more deputies 20 years ago than we had today. It's a tough job, and I tell them to take care of each other. it's scary out there. But I think we have a good community, and the reason that we survive and was able to be effective in spite of all that, in spite of our limitations, is because we are in Lincoln County. And without the community behind us, then we couldn't do it.
Jumping across, we've seen changes like marijuana legalization and new distracted driving laws. How have recent changes in Missouri law impacted your deputies on the street?
Well, I guess as a community, I'd say the regulation of marijuana, it's not all legal. So there is regulations, so you can still get arrested for marijuana in some context. But you're anybody's family's. They smell it all the time. My wife said not too long ago, I smell a skunk. I said, that's marijuana. So that's we as a community, that's probably changed everybody's perspective on the community is the marijuana. What was it? For the county-wide, I think statistically, we would probably, as law enforcement, we'd make over 100 arrests for marijuana every year. So I was trying to set statewide, I think it's nearly 20,000 marijuana arrests was made statewide, and all that's gone away.
Is that since legalization, or?
Yeah, well, before.
Oh, before
legalization. So before legalization, you're talking about 20,000 arrests for marijuana-related charges, and then I think last year we had 6. I think, if I'm correct in my statistics, but we went from 100 as a county, all law enforcement, to I think 6.
Wow.
So you can still do things that's going to get you in trouble if you don't follow the what restrictions remain. So there is that. But marijuana has definitely changed the way we do it, and some of those ways are better. But obviously, marijuana is, as people said, it's not your granddaddy's marijuana or something like that. And the fact that my grandfather, and I'm like, yeah, it's 1970s. So yeah, I never smoked marijuana, by the way. So I tell people that, and I tell you, to be honest, I never smoked because I said no. It's just that no one ever offered it to me. I was too busy scooping corn and hog manure on the farm. So I wasn't really running with that kind of crowd that either that, and then also my friends were too stingy. They didn't want to share. So, but no one ever handed it to me and offered me. I never said no, but I don't know what that's all about. All I can tell you as a police officer is that when I arrest people for it, I got it out of my car. So it gave me a headache just having it in the car. So it's nothing that I'm a big fan of. So, but I guess some people in this world, they say that it helps them. And I hope that it does, but I feel like, based on anecdotal stories and then just seeing how things have happened in this community, that I'm afraid that in 10, 20 years, we're going to look back and the laws are going to have to catch up to the modern society, because I don't think this is, the same levels. I think it's affecting people psychologically. I know behavioral health is becoming more and more of an issue, and I really don't think that's because I think it's worse. Even as a police officer, I think we encounter that more and more every day, and it's hard to get perspective on that in Lincoln County because the population has doubled since I've been a young police officer, and it's just we have to become better at addressing that, and we work towards that every day. It's a challenge, but it's hard to see if marijuana is one of those things that's affecting it, because just the population in and of itself, there's more people here and there's going to be more problems. So it's to study that statistically, it's more challenging just because of our population explosion. But I'll let you know.
Thanks. What's one thing everyday citizens can do that genuinely help your deputies and improves public safety?
Well, if anybody ever sees a deputy is in trouble, please help them. I know that I think that people will be out there for us, but there's just a handful of them out there. Just keep your eye on them. Help them if you can. If they ask you a question, you know the answer, please tell them. And by the way, ask them why. They all know that you deserve an answer. So if you want to know why they're doing something, ask them, and they'll tell you, not while they're doing it. So and this is a real thing, by the way. So people, there's a law that they've established in Missouri now not to interfere with first responders. And that seems like common sense, but maybe it's not. So if a police officer or a paramedic or a firefighter is in the middle of their job, please don't bother them at that time. Don't ask them questions if you don't feel like it makes sense to ask that question at the time. But ask those questions when it's appropriate, and they'll give you an answer, but not in the middle, because you might find yourself arrested, and we don't want that. My goal for a jail is to have an empty jail, but you have to help me do that by staying out of trouble, and that's one of those ways where, because it's a new law, I bring it up, so we can talk about that. Just stay out of trouble.
Well, before we wrap up, I want to give you the floor for a moment. Is there anything you want to say to the people of Lincoln County? Something we didn't cover, something you feel is important, or something you don't always get the opportunity to explain?
Well, I can tell you that the sheriff's office is very complex. I'd say most people don't understand what the sheriff's office really does for us as a community. We have bailiffs in our courts. We have people, civil process, serving papers for the courts as officers of the courts to make sure that even civil cases are adjudicated and has people have their say. We have school resource officers in every school district in Lincoln County. We're the only law enforcement agency that does that at this time. We'd like more help. We have detectives. We have a detective in the cybercrime unit that's hunting people online that are predatories, characters looking to harm our children. We have a detective in the regional drug task force from a strategic level. They're actually toe-to-toe with the cartels trying to keep drugs out of our community. And we have the corrections officers that are doing great work. And it's probably some of the hardest law enforcement work in our nation is being a corrections officer in the jail. And we have the patrol deputies out there responding to calls. We've seen, because I study numbers, I'm one of those guys, I want to understand it that way, that just the patrol deputies, 5 on at a time in 640 square miles, nearly 70,000 people serving, and throughout the year, they do 25,000 things for us. Now, if you call us more, then they're being less proactive, because when you're not calling as much, then they're actually hunting. And I like being on offense rather than defense. So we don't want to clean up, we want to prevent in the first place. So we're working towards that. But the sheriff's office has a vast amount of responsibilities, and it's a bit overwhelming. And I'm going to circle back for a minute, because you wanted one unit that I didn't mention is our crime scene unit, and they'd be really aggravated at me if I didn't mention them. But you talk about those folks, they're going out in all times of night, horrible conditions, in the worst possible circumstance, and doing fine work for us. So I can't leave them out. But it's just like, this place it's amazing that there's so much going on there. But even I let stuff, just have to remember that. So I want you to understand that the sheriff's office does a lot for us, just to help keep us safe. And I want everybody to do everything they can to support the men and women of this organization. And if nothing else, you see them, say good morning, say good afternoon, and just have a conversation with them. I would appreciate that.
Well, Sheriff, I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. The series is about transparency, connection, and helping the public better understand how things actually work, not just reacting when something goes wrong. Thanks for serving Lincoln County and for being willing to have these conversations and giving me that tour around your facility.
Yeah, well, you stay safe, and everybody out there stay safe, and God bless you all.
Thank you, Sheriff.